Hello YouTube and welcome to my guide on the basics of DPS. In this video I'll cover some basic DPS rotations for all three styles. I'll recommend some revolution bars. I will also mention some additional ways to increase DPS, but I'm not going to cover how to do DPS in an optimal fashion, just the basics. There are 4 DPS rotation components. There's the damage boosting ultimate abilities, which significantly increase your character's DPS over a period of time. Threshold abilities, which significantly increase your character's DPS for a short period of time. Basic abilities, which gain adrenaline but do less DPS. And then auto attacks, which are sometimes occasionally used for free in between abilities, but otherwise you try to avoid using. There are 4 ultimate abilities that you can use to significantly increase your character's damage over time. There's Berserk, which is the melee style ultimate ability. It adds 100% damage to your character plus 50% damage taken to your character for 20 seconds. There's Sunshine, which is for magic. It adds 50% damage to your character for 30 seconds. It also does between 160 to 320% damage to your target if it's in the Sunshine area. There's Death Swiftness, which also adds 50% damage to your character for 30 seconds, and also does between 160 and 320% damage to your target if it's in the Death Swiftness area. And then finally there is Metamorphosis, which adds 62% damage to your character for 15 seconds. It shares cooldown with Sunshine, and is the only ability that actually boosts damage over time abilities. Threshold abilities are strong damaging abilities that your character can use if it has 50% adrenaline. Each threshold requires 50% adrenaline to actually use, but it only takes 15% adrenaline to use once you've used a threshold, which means if your character started with 50% adrenaline, after it uses a threshold, he'll have 35% adrenaline. Some example threshold abilities are Assault, Snapshot, and Wild Magic. Finally, let's get to the basic abilities. The basic abilities are generally the weakest abilities that your character is able to use. They don't need any adrenaline to use, but they gain 8% adrenaline every time they're used, or 9% adrenaline if your character has Fury of the Small active. Some example basics are Corruption Shot, Punish, and Dragon Breath. Before I continue on explaining what abilities you should use, I'll explain what a revolution bar is as well. Revolution bars are sequences of abilities that are in a yellow rectangle on your primary action bar. The abilities to the left in the yellow rectangle get used first, and then followed by the abilities to the right. To have a good revolution bar, you want to put the strongest abilities to the left, and put your weaker abilities that you don't want to use as often to the right. Revolution bars can also be set to trigger threshold and ultimate abilities, like so. There are 2 phases to a DPS rotation. There's the ultimate ability enhanced rotation. In this rotation you want to use as many threshold abilities as possible and use some basics to make sure you get additional damage and to build adrenaline to get to use more threshold abilities. After the ultimate ability rotation, you have the waiting for the ultimate ability rotation. In this place, the damage over time abilities get very good to use since they tend to be stronger than regular abilities but aren't boosted by your ultimate ability. You also use basics, thresholds when you have extra adrenaline, and preparing for the ultimate ability, which means building to 100% adrenaline when the ultimate ability is about to get off of cooldown. You're just going to repeat this until the boss dies. It's important to note that your revolution bar will cover the use of the basics, so we'll cover what revolution bars in your style you should use. In a general ultimate ability rotation, just before you start the ultimate ability, you want to switch to the Ring of Vigor if possible. When the ultimate ability is active, you want to use basic abilities to build your adrenaline. If you have an adrenaline potion, you want to drink it at the start of the ultimate ability, and then you use as many thresholds as you can. If your adrenaline gets below 50%, continue using basics to build up to 50% adrenaline in order to continue to use threshold abilities. We'll cover what threshold abilities and what basics to use later on in this video. Once you have finished the ultimate ability rotation, you'll now be in the waiting for ultimate ability rotation. Just after you use the ultimate ability, you're going to use basics to build adrenaline and threshold abilities. You're going to want to prioritize the damage over time abilities because they're going to do more damage than your normal abilities, but they're not going to be useful when the ultimate ability gets off of cooldown. As you get close to the next ultimate ability, you want to mainly use basic abilities and hold off on threshold abilities unless you're 100% adrenaline and the cooldown of the ultimate ability is still 5 seconds or more out. Now that I've covered all the general information about DPS rotations, now let's go into what specific DPS rotations we should use for each of the styles: melee, magic, and range. In melee, your ultimate ability that you use is Berserk. Your rotation in this Berserk is going to last 20 seconds, and it's going to be followed by a building to ultimate ability rotation that lasts 40 seconds. If you have the Greater Flurry ability though, this part can get down to around 30 seconds, which means you get to do a Berserk roughly every 50 seconds instead of 1 minute. In a Berserk rotation, here are the thresholds that we are going to primarily use. If you're using dual wield, you're going to use Assault first. If you have time, Destroy afterwards, and then Flurry or Greater Flurry if you have even more time. If you're using two-handed though, you will use Assault, Hurricane, and then Quake. You're going to build adrenaline using basics from the Revolution bar, which we'll discuss in a moment. After you finish the Berserk rotation, you're going to largely use the same thresholds you use as during the Berserk rotation. However, in two-handed, you'd use the Slaughter ability first if you can move the target, followed by an Assault, Hurricane. You'd use Blood Tendrils here because it doesn't get boosted during a Berserk, and then Quake if you still need a threshold to use. For dual wield, you also use Slaughter and then move target first, followed by Assault, Destroy instead of Hurricane, Blood Tendrils, because the Blood Tendrils is strong outside of Berserk, and then Flurry or Mutated Flurry. You're going to build adrenaline otherwise using the Revolution bar. Again, as you get close to the end of the cooldown for Berserk, make sure you build up to 100% quickly. This is all of the basic abilities available to a RuneScape character using the melee style. You want to choose the best 7 abilities available to your character and put it in the yellow Revolution bar, best abilities put first. Keep in mind that if you have any abilities that are greater versions of another ability or regular versions of an ability that there's a lesser version of, your character will not be able to use both. For example, your character will not be able to use Dismember and Lesser Dismember. Your character will just be able to use Dismember. And your character will not be able to use Greater Fury, and Fury, your character would just be able to use Fury. These abilities will be what your character uses to build adrenaline in preparation for ultimate or threshold abilities later on. For magic DPS rotations, they're going to mainly use the Sunshine ability to increase their damage. Sunshine lasts 30 seconds, however, if you use it with the Planted Feet perk, it lasts 36 seconds, however, it will not do any damage to your target regardless of where your target is. Outside of Sunshine, there's going to be the Building to Sunshine rotation, which will last either 30 seconds, or it can last 24 seconds if your character used Planted Feet. In a Sunshine rotation, the thresholds to use for both dual wield and two-handed styles are Wild Magic. You can use this twice with an Adrenaline Potion or Limitless. Asphyxiate, Detonate with the Blast Diffusion Boots, and then the Gothic Staff Special Attack, which is not a threshold attack, but it is a weapon special that your character should be able to use relatively easily. Of course, you're going to build adrenaline using basics from the Revolution bar. when you're building to a Sunshine Rotation, the thresholds to use are exactly the same as when you're in a Sunshine Rotation. You're going to use Wild Magic, Asphyxiate, Detonate with the Blast Diffusion Boots, Gothic Staff Special Attack, and you're going to be building Adrenaline using basics from the Revolution bar. With the basics, you're going to want to prioritize using Corruption Blast and Combust during this time, while the ultimate ability is not active. To make your Revolution bar for magic, it's going to be basically the same way you made it for melee. You're going to choose the best 7 abilities available to your character and put it in the yellow Revolution bar, best abilities to the left. Again, keep in mind that if you have normal versions of abilities, that they will replace your ability to use the lesser versions, and the greater versions of abilities will replace your ability to use the regular versions of abilities. So, for example, Greater Chain will replace your ability to use regular Chain, and Dragon Breath will replace your ability to use lesser Dragon Breath. For ranged DPS rotations, you're going to be using the Dust Swiftness ability as your ultimate ability. It'll last 30 seconds, however with the Planted Feet perk, it'll last 36 seconds. After the Dust Swiftness rotation, you're going to have the Building to Dust Swiftness rotation, which will last either 30 seconds or 24 seconds if you used Planted Feet. In the Dust Swiftness rotation, the abilities you use as thresholds are identical in both two-handed and dual wield. You're going to be using Snapshot twice if you have the Adrenaline Potion or the Limitless ability available, Rapid Fire, Shadow Tendrils, and if you still need a threshold to use, Bombardment. Again, you're going to build Adrenaline using basics from the Revolution bar. Just after you have finished the Dust Swiftness rotation, you're going to end up in the Building to Dust Swiftness rotation. You're going to use the same thresholds you would use in a Dust Swiftness rotation, and you're going to build Adrenaline using basics from the Revolution bar as you usually would. However, you're going to prioritize using Corruption Shot and Fragmentation Shot as your basics because those will be your best basics, but they will not actually benefit from the Dust Swiftness that comes later on. Now to make the Revolution bar. Again, choose the best 7 abilities that are available to your character here. Again, watch out and make sure that you aren't trying to use a greater version and a regular version of the same ability, nor a regular version and a lesser version of the same ability. Choose the best 7 and put the best abilities to the left of the Revolution bar first. After you've figured out your DPS rotations of all the styles, here are some other ways you can increase your DPS, though I will not go into detail on how any of them really work. There are Invention perks, auras, Limitless ability, Reprisal ability, Vulnerability bombs, overloads, tier 99 or tier 95, curses, the Eldritch Crossbow, Zaros Godsword, the Blood Essence, even more ways to increase your DPS. You have God Books, DPS Familiars, higher level Adrenaline Potions, Archaeological Monolith perks, the Essence of Finality Amulet, Dual Wield and Two-Hand Switching, Vortic Auto Attack, for magic, and then starting at 100% Adrenaline at a boss, which is probably the easiest of these to actually start implementing. I'm going to end this video on a final note that having a good DPS rotation does not ensure that you're going to have fast boss kills. It's important to keep in mind that mechanics at a boss can make it very difficult to actually get fast kills because these mechanics can very easily disrupt your DPS rotations and cause you to have slow kills. So these DPS rotations are good to have, and it's good to work on your DPS rotations, but it's not everything, and there's many more things you have to do in order to ensure a fast bossing kill. I hope you enjoyed the video. DPS rotations are kind of one of the most important things to learn when you're fighting bosses. Hopefully you'll learn something, and comment down below if you learned something or what you liked most about the video, and be sure to leave a subscription on the channel as well. Have a good one.